I have been getting a lot of questions about my torch setup, so I wanted to go over with you what my torch is, how I set it up, the tools that you need, so that if you have a similar torch, hopefully this helps you so that you know what to do every time you need to replace a tank or just to get yourself set up and soldering. My name is Vanessa. I am a self-taught metalsmith and I'm the creator of With Love Jewelry. When I first started metalsmithing, I had purchased a soldering kit online and it came with one of those little butane torches. I absolutely hated it. I had realized that it wasn't going to be the right torch for me and I wasn't able to create the pieces that I wanted to with it, being that it had such little flame control. So I started doing my research to get a more sophisticated torch setup, and I ended up purchasing the Gentex small torch as opposed to the Smith little torch. Both systems come with oxygen propane setups, oxygen acetylene setups, and I believe they both have oxygen natural gas setups. I'm not entirely sure on that though, so don't take my word for it. But based on what you're doing, the size of the work that you're doing, and the type of heat that you need, do your research, figure out what fuel source you need, what's best for you, and then you can make your decision based on what type of or what company you want to go with and what type of torch you want to end up buying. If you are looking for something a little bit less intense than this, and this really isn't intense, but there are dental torches available that still give you flame control, and they have handheld torches, and it comes with an oxygen and I believe propane canisters that you can use to solder with if you don't want to go with something this big. Let's get you closer to my torch and start setting it up. So the tools that you will need to get yourself set up is 2 monkey wrenches. If you only have one, you can probably make do, but I highly recommend having 2, just because when you're trying to tighten everything up, it's really helpful to have one to hold and one to tighten with. And that's it. That's all you need to get yourself good to go with your torch. When you get your torch, specifically this setup, let me move you a little bit. It's going to come with your carrying case. You're going to have an empty oxygen tank, and then you're going to have your valves, your hose, your torch handle, and then 5 tips. Mine is the 5-tip system. So the first thing you're going to want to do is research where you can get oxygen tank replacements. And once you think you've found where you're going to go, do a little bit more research. And the reason I say this is because I had found where I was going to take my oxygen tank to be swapped out. It was decent close, it was a great price, I was so excited. Then I did a little bit more research. I found a place that was even closer and it was half the price. So sometimes you'll find a little mom and pop shop that has oxygen replacements and they have really great prices on them. That's what I do. There's a place maybe 5 minutes down the road from me and they're phenomenal. I love them. So you're going to want to get yourself a full oxygen tank. And then with this particular setup, the propane tanks that I use are the little Coleman ones that I get from Walmart. It's a 4-pack. You can get the taller ones, but you cannot use the grilling tank with this valve, and there is a difference with this valve than with something that you would use, for example, for grilling, and that is called a flashback arrestor. The little tanks do not create enough pressure to allow for a flashback to happen. Your flame will just extinguish. It won't actually flash back up through your hoses. But if you do end up getting a bigger system with a larger propane tank, you're going to want to look for a flashback arrestor if your tank does not already come with it. And I'll show you over here on my oxygen valves. This little piece right here is the flashback arrestor. It only allows for the flow of air in one direction, and that direction should always be towards the handle. So if there was ever a flashback to occur in the handle, it would want to travel up the hose into your tanks, but because of this only allowing airflow in this direction, it will stop the flashback from getting to your tanks and you won't have as bad of a day as you would if you didn't have that. But like I was saying, because these propane tanks are so small and don't create enough pressure to induce a flashback, you don't actually need a flashback arrestor for it, which is why we just have basically it's a open and shut off valve for our little tanks. Let's get to setting up our torch. This is really a very easy setup. All you're going to do is take your oxygen valves. It has a little hex nut back here that's going to attach to your oxygen tank. So go ahead and thread that on. Get it hand tight for now. We're not going to tighten everything up like crazy just yet. Okay, and then we are going to, ooh, I'm all tangled up here. What happened? And then we are going to attach our shut off and open valve to our fuel canister. So this is good to go. This is done. Propane's super easy. We just have a few extra steps for our oxygen tank to make sure that we have the correct pressure for our torch tip. And the best way to do this is to look at your manual for whatever torch system you have. On each torch tip, there is a little number, and that number corresponds to a specific pressure that you want to set on your oxygen valves. So we're going to start opening up our oxygen so that we can set the correct pressure. But before we do that, we're going to tighten everything up so that we don't have a big oxygen leak. So just go in with your monkey wrench, get your hex nut nice and tight, and once you feel like it's good and tight, we can go ahead and open the little knob on the top. And because this is so tight, we're going to start loosening it up. And once we do that, you're going to see pressure build up inside of our pressure gauges. So we're just going to open it up. Okay, so we're going to open until we get to the right pressure here. And that's about 10. Every time you open your oxygen valve to release any buildup pressure. So we open. It's too much. Here we go. All right. So that is the correct pressure for the torch tip that I'm using. And now this is good to go. Our propane is good to go. And we have one last step that is super important. So let's get to that. So our last step to setting everything up before we begin soldering is to make sure there are no leaks. And the best way to do this is to get yourself a bowl with soapy water, get a sponge, suds it up, and then every place that there is a connection joint, we are gonna suds it up with soap, and we are looking for bubble growth. If the bubbles are growing, it means that there's a leak and we need to tighten that up a little bit more. If there are no bubbles growing, it means that we're ready to start soldering. This is something that you need to be doing every time you replace a tank, whether it's oxygen or propane, just to be safe. Make sure there are no leaks. That's your money being wasted, and you really don't want to be, sitting at your bench for how many hours you have a propane leak and you're breathing that in. So takes 2 minutes, it's so worth it. Just suds up your sponge, wipe every connection point down, and then check for growing bubbles. So I'll wipe everything down and then I'll bring you closer to see if there are any bubbles. So as you can see, we have no bubble growth anywhere, which means we are good to go. Wipe all of your soapy water off of your fixtures. And now we check to make sure that our torch is working. On the Gentech handle, red is for fuel and red is for fuel and blue is for oxygen. I think Smith is red and green, I'm not entirely sure. So we're gonna open up our propane. That's working beautifully. Oh my God, my hair is down. I forgot my hair was down. So I'm just gonna hold this away from me so you guys can see. So propane is working, and we're gonna see if our oxygen is working. And we have fire. So we're good to go. This tank is all set up and we are ready to begin soldering. If you are finding that when you replace a tank or as you're starting out, you're having a hard time getting your flame control down, double check your pressure in your oxygen tank to make sure that it is the correct pressure for the tip that you're using. Sometimes I just, I can't I'll have swapped out my oxygen tank and I can't figure out why everything is melting and I'm just unable to solder easily. And then I'll check my gauge one more time. I'm like, oh, it's a little bit too high. I turn it back to where it's supposed to be and everything just works like magic. So I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed it, I would love for you to like it and to subscribe to my channel so that you can follow me on my journey of becoming a better self-taught metalsmith. Your like, follows, and comments really help me grow my channel, and they really help me on my process towards getting monetized. We're millimetering, if that, I'm just gonna make it a word. We're millimetering our way towards being monetized, but I appreciate every single one of you and all of your likes and comments and follows. And so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful and helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.